Hey everybody, welcome back to Gideon Stuff. Today I'm here with my dad, kind of trying to film some videos to schedule out before I get back to school. And today we're going to talk about a very specific knife, and it's one that I've reviewed on the channel before, but I may have been a little bit too harsh on it. So before we get into that, why don't you go ahead and say what you do?
Alright, so my name's Gavin. I'm his dad, and I'm a rural, mobile, large animal veterinarian, which means that I work on horses and cattle and sheep and goats and llamas and alpacas, and I drive around the country, the two counties I work in, doing that. And a lot of times you need equipment on hand, and because you're 40, 50, 60 miles from home, if it's not in the truck, you don't have it. And so that kind of leads into why I'm on the show today.
Right. So a long time ago, I think it was Father's Day, I gave Dad this knife. You can go ahead and show it. And this is a Civivi Baklash. And I reviewed this knife. I had one. I reviewed it. I wasn't too impressed with it, and I sold it. But I already got this one for Dad. And I must admit, I was a little bit afraid that he wouldn't like it that much. But
So as I said, sometimes you find yourselves without the equipment you need. And normally to perform a necropsy, which is a postmortem exam on an animal that has died, and you need to do an exam by doing a necropsy, a postmortem, to see why this animal died, or to collect samples for a lab to determine it. And I've been caught twice now needing to do a necropsy without my necropsy kit, which normally includes several knives, skinners, boners, saws, hatchets, loppers to cut ribs with. And fortunately, both those times, one was on a calf that was only a few weeks old that had died, and the other was on a couple of sheep who had been killed by dogs. And in both cases, the owners wanted a necropsy, and in both cases, I was miles and miles from home. And putting off a necropsy is not a good idea to say, oh, I'll come back tomorrow, because the tissues will have changed dramatically. So I reach into my pocket and I pull out this knife, and I perform those necropsies, and it actually performed really well.
I remember you called me. We were on the phone the first time you told me about it, and you told me that you used it for a necropsy, and I was kind of stunned. And I came home for the summer, visiting around and stuff, and you showed me your knife, and I was expecting to see, let me see it for a second. I was expecting the edge to be absolutely destroyed. I was expecting there to be play and lock rock and all kinds of stuff. And it really wasn't. And after the second one you did, I actually did sharpen the knife up for you. And took a screaming edge, still holding up great. And that's why I kind of want to make this video. Maybe I was wrong about this knife. Now, some of the things I said about this knife I think do still hold true. I said that the action was bad, and I still hold by that this knife doesn't really have a great detent. You can get it if you get it just right, but I don't think the detent's that great. However, I mean, it's perfectly centered, rock solid. This hollow grind on this 9CR blade, I mean, it's a slicer for sure. It's not very, thick blade either. But, I've definitely been really impressed. And I mean, from what you've done with this knife, it's kind of given me a lot of faith in Civivi's build quality. And just how, I mean, this is not an expensive knife. This is a $42 knife. The Civivi Baklash is not an expensive knife at all. And, I mean, I think I've handled knives in the $80, $100, $200 price range that probably wouldn't have done half as good as this knife did.
And, one disclaimer I guess I would do is I would not say, go out and necropsy a full-grown Holstein dairy cow with one knife. But a calf, a sheep, doing just limited necropsies. I say that just so that my colleagues in the veterinary profession don't say, I'm going to call foul. Definitely you would not go out and necropsy an adult animal. But on a calf, and on a couple of sheep where I was just mainly wanting to determine, in that case, we knew they'd been killed by dogs. I was needing to determine if there are any other issues going on, primarily if either one was pregnant, so that the owner could then speak to the owner of the dog about that issue. So it worked well. I was real pleased with it.
Another thing too is you have another knife, a CGRB Tigris, and that knife, of course, this isn't just this is your EDC. Like this is the knife that you work on the ranch with, you take to work. It's the knife that you use for just about everything. And your Tigris, I actually had it for a while, doing some maintenance on it, and it had some issues. The edge on that knife got chipped significantly. It developed a lot of lock rock and rusted too. And I gotta say, I have said before that I love 9CR18 steel, which this knife is in. And yeah, it's a fantastic steel. It holds up. It's stainless. It's really good stainless. It holds an edge really well. It takes a beautiful edge, and it's actually fairly tough. And I think I prefer 9CR over D2, which the Tigris was in. But yeah, another thing about this knife is the ergonomics are really good too, in my opinion.
Yeah, when I was doing those necropsies, one of the things I really liked about it is it has a nice skinning belly for getting the hides off, and then it still has this nice, really pointed tip, so I can get in and make some kind of more delicate cuts. And it's comfortable in my hand. I'm not a big person, so I don't want a huge knife, and this knife is just really good. The handle, what material is that?
It's a carbon fiber G10 laminate.
Because when you're doing a necropsy, you're wearing rubber gloves, and then it's getting slick with materials getting on it. And I mean, it never slid, it never slipped on me. Super pleased with it.
Okay, so Dad ran and got his actual necropsy kit, just to kind of show you what he usually uses.
So yeah, normally, what this knife replaced that day, I have a couple of big skinners. I actually have a variety of smaller fillet type or boning knives. This one has a very flexible blade. These two are more stiff. This is just a skin and gut hook. And then I've got, the ability to have scalpels. This is actually kind of a newer, this is a Havilon knife, and it'd been nice to have had that day, but I didn't. So this actually took the place of these knives. And as I said, I wouldn't want to be without these on a big job. But for a small job, this knife did the job.
And I gotta say, these are some of the most beat up, hardest used knives I have ever seen. I mean, they really do get. And I've been with you to several necropsies, and it never ceases to amaze me at the skill and precision in which you take apart an animal. And actually, I remember going out with you one night when I was real little, probably about 7, to a lady's. She had a calf that was breached.
Yeah.
And that was February, and it was freezing cold, inch of blood on the ground. It was miserable, but I mean, I remember being very impressed that I was standing there freezing, holding your tools, and you're down there in the mud getting stuff done. Definitely have been used a lot. And, and doing a necropsy is a lot different than dressing out an animal after you kill it. Like for a hunt.
It is, yes.
So
you're very much concerned about preserving the architecture of the tissues, so you're not wanting to just dump everything out. You want it to look as you go. But even at that, it's still a big job. And also, when you're dressing out an animal, you're not worried necessarily about getting into the rib cage to look. You're splitting the sternum. Here, I'm actually trying to make almost a door or window into the chest cavity to see stuff in situ, so I can determine if there's pathology there or not. And that leads me to a path to make a decision as to where I need to go with diagnostics. If I spend money for the client on submitting things to the lab, or if I just tell them, this is obviously this calf obviously had pneumonia, I don't think you need to worry about spending money on diagnostics. Let's spend money on treatment and prophylaxis for the rest of the herd.
I have a viewer who said several times that my channel should be called the Knife Learning Channel, and today it sure is living up to that name. But yeah, I was really impressed with this little Civivi Baklash, and in the review I did of this knife, I might have been a little harsh, and I'm a big enough man to admit when I'm wrong. I still think this knife has a couple of issues, especially in terms of that action, but you know, and I've criticized Civivi as a brand in recent months. I think that a lot of their knives, I mean, they release dozens of knives a year, and a lot of them just look so androgynous and similar. And I've criticized that. I've criticized their action. I've criticized, you know, just different things about them. But one thing that I will never criticize is their build quality, because they really do know how to build a solid working knife. And the other thing I was going to talk about too is, you know, the best thing an EDC knife can be is on you when you need it. And in order for you to have it with you, you need to want to carry it. And so I've been borrowing this knife from you for a while.
Yeah.
Go ahead and give that back.
So this was one of the first real knives I was ever given, and this was given to me when I was about 14 years old, and I'm sure a lot of you recognize it. It's the classic buck hunting knife, and it's an amazing knife. I mean, it's still real tight, it's gorgeous, but this thing weighs 180 pounds in your pocket or on your belt, and I mean, it would easily do the job that this knife did. Again, it's got it's made for that job, for cutting up big animals, but it's just such a chunk. You know, I need a knife that I don't think about having on me until I need it.
And so weight is a big thing, but something you've talked to me about a lot is profile. So this is a pretty lightweight knife, a CGRB Caldera, but you wouldn't really carry this because it's fat.
It's fat, yeah.
So
it'd take up a lot of room in my pocket, and I'd be feeling it there all the time. I mean, this is not a small knife, obviously, and maybe I'm just used to it being there, but I carry it in my right pocket, clipped on, and I don't really think about it until I need it, and then I reach for it and grab it and do the work I need to do. So that's a great value to me.
I know I'm the knife reviewer, but in a lot of ways I think you're a lot pickier about the knives you carry than I am.
Well, I don't carry a knife for looks. You know, I grew up, I remember my granddad, my uncle, my dad, my other uncles, the cousins, you know, it was old timers and Uncle Henry knives. I thought those were the knives, and they're just in their pocket, and I mean, they would get whittled down to these toothpick sized blades because they were using them all the time in the logging and sawmilling industry, in the ranching industry. And it just, I remember as a young veterinarian thinking, gosh, you know, I can't have a necropsy knife on me all the time. And there's situations where as a veterinarian, you need a big blade. I have lots and lots of sharp blades. I have scalpel blades, but they're that long. And I mean, they'll cut through anything, but sometimes you need a big blade. And so when Gideon started this up and was coming up with these knives that were, you know, went from this idea, again, I love this old knife, don't get me wrong, but from this heavy idea to here's a knife you just have in your pocket, just like you would your old Schrade knives, and they've got a big blade on them. I thought, hey, that's awesome. And so I carried this one or the other one he's talking about almost every day.
all right, so I think that's going to just about wrap this up. I thought that was really cool. I love seeing knives get used. You guys know on this channel, I test a lot of knives. I want to see what a knife is capable of. I love when people loan in knives. I love seeing knives that have already been used by people, because you know your pocket knife really collects a lot of your personality, a lot of your character, tells your story a little bit, and you know it's always cool to see a good tool, you know, if something works, it's good to see it, and I always appreciate seeing that. And so I was pretty excited, hearing all these things from Dad about what he was doing with his knives and how well they're holding up. And so I want to share it with you guys. I hope you appreciated it.
It's good being with you here today, Gideon. Appreciate the opportunity.
Alrighty, I think that's going to be it. I've been Gideon. This has been Gavin. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Adios.